Welcome to Breaking Financial Chains, where we combine practical money guidance with emotional healing to help you break free from financial limitations. I'm Tanya Ibberson, your financial wingwoman.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Breaking Financial Chains. I'm so happy that you're here with me. I'm testing out some new equipment on today's episode, so I would love to hear what you guys think about it. Have you got any feedback for me? Is the picture quality better? The sound was, I think, the biggest area of feedback that I had before. So we've got some new kit, microphone and a camera, and here we are. So testing it all out. But without further ado, on to today's episode, where I want to talk to you about how to create a financial safety net beyond your job or beyond the business that you're running for yourself. As I'm recording this today, it's the beginning of September. It's like the new academic year, new start, new you, all of that sort of stuff. It's a great time to be kickstarting a change after the summer. Kids are going back to school, winding up till the final quarter of the year, so we can start to think about the habits or perhaps where we might want to be by the end of 2025, bearing in mind that we've now got 4 months left of the year, that we can start to notice some sort of progress or start to notice a little bit of a difference. But I want to start with a little bit of sort of an awareness piece or a truth bomb or whatever the sort of language that you like to use around this sort of a subject, and that's around job security or the illusion of job security. So your job might feel secure. It might feel as though because you're in employment, you're in a safer position than someone who's in self-employment, and that might feel the case until it isn't, until you get that call into the office or until you get that fateful email where you're just told we can't pay the wages this month, or your role is being made redundant, or there isn't enough work for you to do in these changing times and in the economy the way it is at the moment. There is so much uncertainty for everybody, with costs spiraling and skyrocketing. The element or the essence of what financial security and a financial safety net means to different people. Essentially, there's nobody coming to save you. There's nobody going to come and do this for you. This is something that, regardless of what your circumstances are, that we need to start taking some responsibility for ourselves and putting things in place to be able to make sure that we have those safety nets, to be able to make sure that we have something in place to actually help. What we want to do is acknowledge that essentially most people, the vast majority of people, are one unexpected event away from panic, whether that's an unexpected bill, whether that's the car breaking down or failing its MOT, whether that's being laid off, whether that's a family member having some unexpected expenses that we want to be able to help out. How far would we be able to support ourselves or push things until that's going to be a problem for us financially? Now, and the goal here isn't fear. It's not to try and cause any panic in itself. Essentially, what I want to talk to you and explore is what freedom looks like through preparation and burying our heads in the sand and not dealing with this or hoping that eventually somebody is going to do this for us, or we're going to get a lottery win or something like that. We can actually start to take control of this one step at a time. Financial safety nets are quite literally a lifesaver, whether we need them as a result of redundancy, through illness, through burnout, through childcare changes or family emergencies. They can be exactly what we need in the moment, and it's like an insurance policy in itself, in that we don't need them until we need them. We pay car insurance and it just feels like an outgoing or a waste of money until we actually need to be able to claim on that insurance, or the house insurance that you're constantly paying out and have got nothing to show for it until we need to claim on that insurance, and then we're really, really glad that we have that provision in place. So a safety net, we'll want to look at this from a positive, what that actually is going to feel like to have in place. It gives you time to not have to rush into making a decision that you perhaps wouldn't have if you didn't have some financial buffering to be able to give you that grace period. It gives you a little bit of dignity in that you're not necessarily going to have to be pushed into a situation where you have to say yes, or you have to accept a price that someone is going to offer you for your car as scrap. Because actually, if I took a little bit of time, maybe I could replace the battery and sell it as a car that is actually going to work. Just for example, that's literally just an example I've just thought of. It gives us choice. It gives us the ability to say thanks but no thanks without being pushed down a road that we're feeling trapped in, because we do have choices, because we've got the finances to be able to take a step back and not have to make a decision in the moment when we might be panicked or feeling under pressure. And without that financial safety net as well, we can feel stuck. We can feel as though we have to stay in a job that we hate. We can feel as though we have to continue working for a boss that perhaps not being particularly respectful of our expertise and of the time that we spend at work. It means that we end up staying in relationships because we can't afford to leave. We can't afford to support ourselves and perhaps our children as well, with the expense of what the rent or the mortgage and all of the bills might look like. We end up stuck in cycles that we hate, and we end up getting pretty resentful. So talking about what that financial safety net brings for us, and actually sitting down and journaling around what kind of a person we might be, who might we be if we could step back and say, I don't have to make that decision right now. I've got a little bit of a financial buffer. I can take a day, a week, a month to think about my options. I can speak to people that I trust, and I can not feel ashamed of needing to have those conversations, because I am taking steps to look after myself. And actually, if I reach out to people with that extra time that financial safety net has bought me, would I make a different decision? Would I be able to take advantage of the help from other people? So it really matters. And it's impossible to predict when those things are going to be needed. So I was in a similar situation. Fortunately for me, it worked out okay. And it was in COVID, actually, when I needed to take my foot off the gas through illness. And it worked out really well in the end. Although I couldn't possibly have predicted it. With COVID, I had several of my clients that didn't need as much of my support because their businesses weren't as busy. They didn't have as many things going on, or some of them had to be completely shut down temporarily. And I had other clients who perhaps did need me to step up. I had some clients in financial difficulty that needed a little bit more support. But at the same time, I'd got myself in a position of burnout and then illness. So I ended up with vertigo and a few other issues that were going on. And I could only work at about 25% capacity while that situation needed to be played out. And that lasted for 8 months. That lasted from the beginning of the year, just after Christmas, right through to the end of August. But because I had that financial safety net in place, it didn't mean then that I couldn't pay the mortgage, and it didn't mean then that I was needing to compromise on certain areas, because I needed to still be able to put food on the table. So that was burnout, and then the illness that resulted from it. We can't possibly predict when we're going to need this. We can't possibly predict when we might be too poorly to work, or we may need to take a step back from work because a loved one is too poorly and we want to be able to support them. So when we talk about a financial safety net, what exactly do we mean? Well, it can be a number of things, and it should be a number of things. So we're not talking about just one thing that's done and then we don't need to worry about it anymore. It's about layering up different kinds of safety nets. It's about a reserve of resources that you can rely on when things change. And it's not just money. It's not just money in the bank. So we want to be able to have an emergency fund, for example. So a flat tire on the car, something that I literally can't pick my kids up from school today if that issue isn't fixed. So I need to be able to get my hands on paying for someone to come out and repair that, or getting the car to the nearest garage where they can put a new tyre on the car. The boiler is broken. And of course that only happens when you really need the heating. Again, I can speak from personal experience with this. When we had an air source heat pump in our home, so December, almost 2 years ago, and the thing went kaput it was the weekend that we put the Christmas tree up, so it was about the 4th or 5th of December, something like that. And we needed to call people out to try and fix the problem. Emergency funds are things where you can get your hands on some cash and then not needing to rely on a credit card or going into debt or further debt to be able to get yourself out of that situation. We also want to be having some short-term savings pots if we can. So if we start to make a small list of the things that we can be contributing to, then we know that we've got things that are earmarked. We're mentally prepared. We know psychologically that we have taken some of these things into consideration, and therefore we don't need to panic quite so much, because even when that unexpected bill comes in, I've still got my savings pots that I'm putting to one side for Christmas, for example, for a holiday, for needing to replace the kids' school shoes because they've grown however many sizes over the year, or even over the summer in some instances, paying for school uniforms and new winter coats and new school bags and all the inevitable stuff that happens around this time of year. Thinking about different sources of income, whether that's passive or semi-passive income, alternative income, whether that's additional contracts potentially that you could pick up dependent upon your line of work, whether you could start a podcast for yourself that you could start to bring you a little bit of income, posting on social media or offering information products or whatever that might be. That can be another form of a safety net that you can let build up over time that you can then rely on. And also things like protection and legal protection and products such as insurances and policies that pay out in the event of illness, in the event that you can't work, whether that's relevant life policies or key man cover or something like that you would need to speak to a financial advisor, someone that's authorised to advise and give information about the products that are most relevant for you and your circumstances. You can look up these things online, but I really can't recommend strongly enough to speak to somebody who is going to get some level of understanding of your current situation, what you need protection for, or what you want your future to look like. So these are all things like getting a will in place, for example, things like making sure you've got a lasting power of attorney in place. These are all things that you can be putting in place over time. And I'm not saying as of today you now need to put 7 different things on your to-do list and you need to have them in place by a week on Monday. This is how can I start to take steps towards each of those things individually to start to make progress. We're not looking to compare ourselves to anybody else, but it's about acknowledging and looking at what you already have in place. It might be that you already do have some things in place, some elements of protection, some elements of a safety net. But how can we get to start putting these provisions in place? And the best piece of advice that I could give anybody is to start where you are. Have a look at what you already have in place. Could you, for example, set up an account with like Top Cashback or Quidco or something along those lines, whereby for any spending that you are already doing online, you can start to earn a little bit of cash back. It could be using your Tesco Club card, your Sainsbury's Nectar points, any other sort of reward type schemes where you could start to build up some savings that you can put in the pot towards treats at Christmas or to buy Christmas presents, for example. It could be that you could start to, that pile of stuff that you've stuffed under the bed in the spare room or shoved in a cupboard because one day you're going to sell it or you're going to donate it. Maybe you could start to sell things on Vinted or eBay or other equivalent sites to start building up a little pot there. What have you got access to right now that you could start to turn into physical ready cash? Your emergency fund could start with just saving up £100 and going from there. If it's £5 a week, £10 a month, whatever that amount might be, showing yourself that we're taking small steps on a consistent basis is the perfect starting point for putting any of these things in place. Quite often we feel as though it needs to be done absolutely immediately, it needs to be done perfectly, we need to be, all 7 things need to be done consistently and alongside each other, and all we're actually doing is setting ourselves up to fail. I quite often compare putting financial plans in place like some sort of fitness or health regime. And if you tell yourself that you need to hit 10,000 steps every day, and we need to hit a certain number of calories within a certain set of macros, and we need to lift weights a certain number of times a week, and we need to drink 2 litres of water every single day, we're immediately setting ourselves up for failure by telling ourselves we have to do all of those things every single day. Whereas if we start off with week 1 consistently hitting 5,000 steps, and then week 2 we increase that to 6,000 or 7,000 steps, that then becomes something that's achievable, and we build that habit in. And it is exactly the same when we're dealing with our finances. Where can we save that extra small amount of money, or where are the subscriptions that we could perhaps look at and review that we could cancel and save that money instead? If we're not missing that money right now, that could be where our savings pots start to grow, because we're effectively repurposing those pounds into something that's going to help us to be in a more solid position. So these don't need to be like hundreds and hundreds or thousands of pounds a month. These just need to start really small. And something that I find quite useful that I recommend to clients is to use emotional budgeting, if that really helps you. So for example, naming your pots with a purpose. What is it that you're saving for? So specifically Christmas, specifically a holiday, specifically a new handbag fund, whatever it might take to give you an incentive to save for something. Name those pots, actually state what that money is for, rather than having just one pot that we're saving for without giving it a purpose. And by having a goal in mind, and ideally as well a time frame, then we're giving ourselves something to aim for, and we know if we've got 6 months to save for something, and we have an idea of how much we want in the bank by that time, then we can find that pretty easy to work out what we've got to save on a regular basis, weekly or monthly, to be able to help us achieve our goal. Whilst we're building up these safety nets, one thing that is really important is to make sure that we acknowledge and work with exactly what is actually in our control, instead of focusing on perhaps what's outside of our control, or perhaps allowing ourselves to be derailed by things that potentially are going to happen. Bills are going to come in, and if we are able to acknowledge where they are, there will be unexpected. There's nothing more certain than uncertainty. So we need to acknowledge that we can control what we can control, and everything outside of that is something that we don't need to be worried about, or we're not going to allow it to derail us. So spending visibility, for example, is going to be really important. It's not good enough to say that I just don't know where the money goes every month. Well, you should, because you have access to your bank accounts, you have access to credit card statements, PayPal accounts, and all the other forms and sources of income. So if you don't know where your money is going every month, then make that a priority to find out. And I'm not suggesting that you look back over 6 months of bank statements. Let's not use this as a weapon to hit yourself over the head with and tell yourself, I should have been doing this for 6 months, I should have been doing this all along. How about we just start right now, going back to that theme of it being September and it's the new academic year. Let this now be the starting point. Don't worry about what's been. Let's control what we can do something about, which is right now. Let's look at where our money is going and where we can start to make small changes and savings. What is in your control is creating buffers, however small those are, however small they start. what tends to happen is as we start to let those things grow, we start to find other ways that we can save to be able to grow more of a buffer. We start to find reasons to maybe not spend that money on certain things because, well, I've got the option to save it instead and maybe find a better deal, or give myself a bit more grace and time to be able to research different options. For example, we don't need to be pushed into any situation, again, just from a rash decision point of view. What is in your control is exploring different income revenue streams, diversifying where your income comes from. So if we're concerned with job security, as an example, which was one of the things we talked about right at the beginning, well, how could you start to build up other income? Could you offer your services to more people on a freelance basis or on a consulting basis? Could you start to consider other contracts or signing yourself up for these websites where you can offer your services to other people? Rental income might be another alternative as well, earning interest, although with interest rates falling as they are, that might not be the best option. Investing is going to be another option in terms of what is in your control. You can actually determine what you have available to be able to save and invest for future you. And you can also control reviewing what protection you have in place right now. Do you have a will in place? Do you have lasting power of attorney? What policies do you have? And checking things like, are your details up to date? Is your address current? Do they have a current mobile number? Who are they going to contact if something happens to you and you need to be paying out, or they need to be paying you out? Do they have up-to-date bank details, for example? All of this life admin, adulting that sometimes feels a little bit overwhelming, taking those small steps to take responsibility, to look after future you now, is all steps that you can take pointing towards showing yourself that you actually are more than worthy of having these things in place for yourself should the need ever arise. And when we start to take small steps, the bigger steps then follow, and the buffers follow, and the emergency funds follow, and the savings pots follow. What we want is to build a bit of a ripple effect or a snowball effect of each little step all contributing towards the bigger goal at the end, regardless of what you've been through to get to where you are now, regardless of habits and situations and circumstances that have got you to where you are. It doesn't matter. What matters right now is starting to build that safety net from now on. And letting go of perfection is going to be one of the most important parts, because like with the steps and the water and the exercise and the nutrition, the important thing is just doing. The most important thing is taking those consistent steps. A safety net is built. It's not bought. It isn't something that you can have overnight. It is something that you have to work on consistently, the same way as muscular gains and fat loss take time. They don't build up. You don't put weight on overnight in the same way as when you want to lose it. It's going to take time. And you don't need to be thinking about, I've got to have 6 months outgoing saved overnight. That's something, again, that's going to take time. But if we don't start small, if we don't start with the £5, £10, £50 here and there, well, that's never going to grow into anything that's going to resemble something that's going to be of use. So the key is to focus on progress and not panic about what you don't have. Again, that's out of our control, something that's already happened. We can't do anything about that. The past, the historical stuff, what's got you to where you are, won't get you to where you want to be unless we're taking those steps to change it. And if we're needing motivation or something to help remind us of why it's important, we can think about the legacy angle, particularly where we've got our kids, our children that are watching the habits and the steps that we're taking. Because if they can see mum taking steps now to save, and let's be honest, it's very difficult to show when we save money, everybody around you, including your children, can see when you spend. They can see when new things arrive in the house. They can see new clothes, new shoes, new uniform, food in the cupboards. They don't see savings because that happens behind the scenes. That happens digitally in a bank account and moving funds around when you've got 5 seconds to yourself late at night or whenever you remember to do it. So the only way that they're going to know that that happens, and that's something that adults do and something that they can aspire to, is by saying it out loud, is by showing them that you have these habits in place and that that's something that they might want to do. Maybe with their pocket money, for example, maybe that they can spend a quarter, save a quarter, invest a quarter and do something else with the rest, or whatever it might be. So talk about what you have in place for your finances, and you don't need to tell them what you haven't got or what you've not done to date. Show them from right now. Let them be the reason that you keep going, because you've started that conversation, and then let them ask you questions. It's about modelling resilience and independence to your children so that they do it because, I mean, why wouldn't you do it? My mum and dad did this. This is what I now do. I now keep all of my financial paperwork in order, and it's in a folder or it's scanned and it's in one place. And I know where to access everything because it's safely stored in a digital vault or equivalent like LastPass or something like that. Share with them how you're building your own safety net, and if you've got more of a story around that, then you can share that story with them. Share, your dad and I are no longer together. However, this is how I've been able to make that work, and these are the steps that I've taken. Because they can see and they pick up on a lot of stuff like that. So if you're in a situation where your situation has massively changed, your circumstances have massively changed, share the positive side of that in terms of, but we're okay because I've taken these steps and I have these systems in place that I'm going to share with you, and I'm going to show you how to do the same for yourselves. So this isn't just about you, this isn't just for you, this is about the ripple effect that this is going to have on future generations as well, and the habits and the consistent steps that you take will be something that they mirror, instead of potentially mirroring what you're not doing because they see the spending or they see the panic or the worry and the comments that we make around, oh, for God's sake, you put your knees through another pair of school trousers or something. Do you think I'm made of money? I can't afford to replace those. Kids pick up on those comments that are made. So being able to take a step back for yourself and think about what a financial safety net might look like for you could be the best 5, 10, 15 minutes that you could do for yourself right now as we're coming into autumn. We're coming into that time of change as everything sort of dies away. I absolutely love autumn. Autumn is my favourite season. I love the changing colours of the leaves, but it's a massive reminder for us of the cyclical nature of the year as it works, and that everything dies down, dies away, and yet grows back. So we get to change in the same way as the seasons around us change, so we can change these habits if we've not got these in place for ourselves already. So I want to share a couple of reflection prompts with you to finish off the episode today. If you could what would change if you knew you were covered financially for the next 3 months? If you didn't have to turn up to work tomorrow, or you didn't have to fulfill the contracts that you've currently got in place with existing clients for 3 months, what would you do differently? And if you're saying to yourself, oh God, yeah, I wouldn't go to the office, I wouldn't log on to start work in the morning, then maybe that's a bigger piece of reflection that you can perhaps gift yourself. Well, nothing changes if nothing changes, right? So what could I be doing to give myself that space? And the second prompt is, what's one small action you could take this week to build a buffer? Just one thing. What could you start to build so that this time next week, future you is going to be thanking you for putting that in place. So the goal here is not financial perfection by any stretch, because I think there are very, very few people could hand on heart say that they have that. The goal here is about financial options and choice, because you deserve to feel safe even when life throws you a curveball. So thank you for listening, and I'll see you again next time.
Thank you for joining me today on Breaking Financial Chains. Remember, you have the power to transform your relationship with money one step at a time. If this episode helped you, please subscribe and leave a review to help others find their path to financial freedom. I'm Tanya, your financial wingwoman, and I'll see you next week.